Wonderful. Well, welcome everybody. We've got a great turnout this afternoon, which is really exciting. We have also got a really exciting agenda today. So please do be aware before we start that all of our contributors have recorded their sessions individually. That means that sometimes the audio may fluctuate between presentations. So you may have to adjust your volume just to make sure it's not too loud or too quiet. In some cases, you may need some headphones, but I think today everybody has been beautifully loud and you shouldn't have too much issue. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have got a jam-packed agenda today. So let's start now. So I'm going to give a quick overview of the report series and how we got to where we are today. And so back in September of 2023, Dr. Megan Wood and Professor Mark Williams were commissioned by the Child of the North all-party parliamentary group to write a report about the challenges that children in the north of England face. Now, this report moved away from the idea of it's all grim up north to paint a really positive picture of all the great work that researchers, practitioners, communities, non-profit organisations, etc., are doing within the north of England to create a fairer future for all children and young people, regardless of their geography or circumstance. And this was really well received by the press and policymakers as well. So much so that this prompted the idea for a new report series, so an ongoing endeavour across the course of 2024. And this was an initiative between the Child of the North and the Centre for Young Lives, which is a think tank led by Anne Longfield, the former Children's Commissioner. So they commissioned a series of reports to set out evidence-based recommendations for the new government, most of which are about what can be done in educational settings. And these are produced in collaboration with the N8, so the 8 most research-intensive universities in the north of England, plus their partnered universities. So this is known as the N8+. As such, each report is led by researchers from N8+ universities. So we've had previous reports that have been led by the University of Leeds, the University of Liverpool, Newcastle University, the University of Bradford, etc. So it is very much a joint-up approach. And these are reports that have been released so far. So we've had reports on poverty, mental health, using schools as hubs, SEND, oral health, etc. And all of these can be accessed by the QR code that you see on your screen at the moment. So we released one a month over the course of 2024, and that means that we've also got a couple more coming throughout the year as well. But we are here today to talk about an evidence-based plan for improving school attendance. It's been a report that's been very well received by the press. So we're very excited to have this webinar today and give individuals the opportunity to ask questions or just learn a little bit more about the report. So without further ado, let's get started. Our first contribution today is by a couple of our leads on this report. So Pamela Qualter and Caroline Bond, and I will let them speak about the report.
Everybody. We're very pleased to be able to present this. It's the 10th report in the Northern 8 series of reports. This one focuses on the challenges and strategies for supporting school attendance. We would also like to thank the great team of academics and practitioners who've made this report possible and provided so many excellent and inspiring case examples. We're going to provide a brief overview of the attendance context and key recommendations, followed by a more detailed consideration of the evidence section of our report. I'm sure we're all very aware that school attendance has attracted lots of attention and concern over the past few years. Although attendance was a concern before the pandemic, COVID-19 has put school attendance into sharp focus, particularly the increase in the number of pupils missing school, the long-term impact of COVID lockdowns on children and young people's development and academic achievement, and concerns about the effectiveness of financial penalties in managing school attendance. In the UK, schools are required to monitor attendance of children on their school roll. So persistent absence refers to children who are absent for 10% or more school sessions, and severe absence to pupils who are missing school for 50% or more sessions. But we should remember that there's no universal cut-offs in this area, and things like persistent absence have shifted over time, reflecting increasing awareness of the importance of regular attendance for school attainment. Parents also risk fines if they take their child out of school, and from August 2024, fines have increased. A fixed penalty is now £80 and increasing from £60, and in 2022 to 23, 89% of fines were for unauthorised holidays. Under the new National Attendance Framework, schools have also been instructed to consider fining parents if their child has 5 or more days of unauthorised absence. However, school attendance is very complex, and the academic literature indicates that there are several categories of non-attendance. Truancy is unexcused absence, where parents are often not aware that their child is leaving school early or missing days. And this can often be treated in quite a punitive way by schools. School refusal or avoidance refers to those young people who find it difficult to attend school and are often highly anxious. School withdrawal is when parents withdraw their child from school, which could be due to a range of factors such as a child's anxiety, parental illness, poverty, or to conceal abuse. Children's pattern of attendance across these categories can change and shift over time. There are some other commonly used terms as well that inform our understanding of attendance. So children missing education refers to those children who've been withdrawn from school and are not actually registered on a school roll. And a recent analysis by the Children's Commissioner showed that there are several thousand children in this category every year. Suspensions and exclusions from school are another area where young people may miss school. So school suspension rates have substantially increased during the last academic year, with young people most commonly suspended for persistently disruptive behaviour. Legally, parents can also opt to home educate their child, and again, this has increased since COVID.
So let's have a look at some of the key insights then from the report. Well, one of the astounding findings was that 1 in 10 children in the north of England are persistently absent without authorisation from school. And that's risen since 2015-16 to 2023-24 by 57%. Those children who are persistently absent are disproportionately from disadvantaged backgrounds. They are more likely to be young carers or those in the youth offending system. Children not school ready are 3 times more likely to later become persistence absentees. That's compared to children in their classes who are school ready. Almost 40% of those who are persistently absent achieve expected grades in English and maths, compared to almost 80% of their peers who are not absent from school. And there are longer term implications of that, with those young people 4 times increased risk of not being in education, employment or training.
This model is a helpful way of summarising the environments around young people which are critical for facilitating their engagement with education. As the diagram shows, there are many factors which interact with and influence each other. So, for instance, we know that if a family is struggling financially, this can affect their ability to provide basic resources to support children's attendance. Also, if that family is in a low-income neighbourhood, young people in that area might be more exposed to crime and gangs, which could increase the risk of truancy or exclusion. Being from a marginalised group could also increase the risk of school avoidance if a young person is experiencing bullying at school. These factors aren't static, they're constantly evolving and changing, and sometimes changing very rapidly, as demonstrated during the COVID-19 pandemic. And COVID was a catalyst for anticipated effects such as anxiety about the return to school, but also unexpected effects such as more parents becoming willing to allow their children to stay at home. As Pam has mentioned, individual risk factors such as special educational needs, illness and school readiness will also interact with these wider factors. And resiliency factors such as a supportive peer group, family and community can help to facilitate school attendance. So we need to collaborate with young people, their families and communities so that we understand risks and resiliency factors, as these will vary considerably between individuals and neighbourhoods.
So what do we recommend then, based on the literature, but also based on the evidence that we've presented? Well, first, a uniform and punitive response simply does not meet the needs of diverse schools, children and young people, families, or their community. We know that there are different types of attendance needs, and there are a wide range of risk factors, and that means that solutions need to be responsive to local contexts. To support schools, we need research that captures that complexity and that enables better understanding of what works, for whom, and in what context. Also, we recommend preventative approaches, such as whole school approaches that focus on the engagement with learning, a sense of belonging and well-being, and those provide a good foundation for supporting school attendance and avoiding the long-term costs that are associated with non-attendance. What we need to do is to address school absence really early, so that we can avoid the long-term negative impacts in areas such as well-being, employment, physical health, and involvement in crime. We propose that schools are the most important hubs for coordinating services delivered by a range of professionals and services. So given the complexity of attendance difficulties, schools can't be expected to solve the problems on their own. What we propose is that they work with local charities, community groups, and professionals to support the development of locally meaningful and trusted approaches. The rest of the presentation, what we'll do is have a look more at the evidence that supports these recommendations. And what I'll do is I'll provide an overview of the evidence section from the report. But what we urge you to do is to actually go and read the report. There's lots of other fascinating findings in there that are really important for understanding local contexts. What I'll do is to pick up on the main key findings. Now, because we're interested in inequality and particularly the issues that affect young children in the north of England, what we've got here is an exploration of differences between parts of the UK and how they affect absence rates. So it's about the north-south divide. Now, children in the north of England experienced longer COVID-19 lockdowns, and they continued to experience higher levels of poverty and reduced educational funding, both during the pandemic and since. And those regional disparities have affected young people in a number of ways, notably increasing their risk of school attendance difficulties. And what we can see here is that pre-COVID, so 2015-16 to 2020, they show an overall absence rates for these three regions. And what we see is they remain relatively stable during that pre-COVID time. But what we do see is that the north of England did show a higher absence rate compared to both the Midland and the south. Doesn't look like a huge difference, but it's a significant one. So notably, the north had higher rates of unauthorised absence, indicating more frequent instances of absence without school permission, and lower rates of authorised absences compared to the other regions. Now, during the COVID pandemic, so 2020, 21 and 22, what we see is a significant surge in school absences. And that's because schools were closed, there were worries about sending children to school and so on. But for us, the really interesting thing is that we're seeing that overall absence rates and unauthorised absence rates are remaining really quite high compared to pre-COVID. And what we're seeing is there's an increase, there's a particularly high rate of absence in the north of England. So our children in the north of England are suffering more, but actually children across the UK are also suffering. Now here what we've done is to have a look at the income deprivation index and have a look at how that is linked to school absences. And our great stats team have been able to produce this lovely graphical image, which basically shows us really important things. What it does is look at the proportion of children aged 0 to 15 years of age in any given area who live in families that are from low-income deprived areas. And what we see is that there are larger concentrations of local authorities in the north of England that experience both high absence rates and elevated deprivation. So basically what we're seeing is deprivation is linked to school absence. The issue for the north of England is that that link is much higher, and because we've got more areas of high deprivation. Another really interesting statistic, and I've spoken about this already today, is this link with school readiness. And this is particularly an issue within the north of England. What the slides show is the percentage of children achieving a good level of development at the end of reception for each of the regions in England. And it's using the most up-to-date data. So this is post-COVID data. It's data from 2022 to 2023. And this solid line, this brown line that we can see, is the English average, which is a score of 67.2%. Now, what we can see is that all of the northern regions are shaded in black. The remaining regions in England are shaded in grey. What that means is that all of these districts within, or all of these regions within the north of England, school readiness is below the national average. What I said earlier was that school readiness is linked to school absence. So this is really important data for us. What it's telling us is that we need to be able to start earlier. We need to get these young people ready for school. Now, in 2018-19, only 36% of persistently absent pupils achieved the expected grades in English and Maths GCSE. And that was compared to almost 80% of pupils who were rarely absent or not absent from school. Now, more than that, 12% of pupils permanently excluded in primary schools scored grade 4 in English, compared to, again, almost 80% of non-excluded pupils. And what this figure shows us is spatial analysis of absence rates and educational attainment across the UK, combining data from 2006 to 2019. So this is pre-COVID data. And what the statisticians have done here is to highlight that a negative correlation between overall absence rates and educational attainment is found predominantly in northern regions. And that's what we see with this grey area on the map. So we're talking there about the northeast, Yorkshire and Humber, but interesting, also the southwest shows this relationship as well. What I think is also interesting, it's not included on the figure, but I think it's really important, is that in addition to lower educational attainment, those that are regularly absent, what we see is this association becomes even more pertinent when we also have pupils who are experiencing problems at home. So when they are coming from particularly disadvantaged areas, they are at increased risk of becoming not in education, employment or training later in life.
So what can we do to support children and young people with their attendance? The literature shows that there are some useful approaches and strategies, but quite a lot of that literature is from outside of the UK. So it's really important that we work to develop a UK-specific evidence base. In the report, we thought about approaches to attendance as being like a pyramid, with universal approaches to support all children and young people at the bottom, and approaches becoming more individualised and multi-agency as we progress up the pyramid. At the universal level, we emphasise the need for working with parents and the community to build a culture which promotes safety and values school attendance by promoting pupils' sense of school belonging. At the targeted level, we emphasise early identification of at-risk pupils and providing support with attendance, learning and social inclusion, and also working more closely with parents and consulting other services who can provide support for young people and their families. At Tier 3, we emphasise the need for very individualised planning with families and professionals. So what works? We know that school attendance is complex and there's no quick fixes, but understanding the causes at neighbourhood level and collaborating with the community is a good foundation for developing local solutions to address local causes. At the universal level, we need to focus on the school-wide culture based on a relational or wellbeing approach, building strong relationships with parents, broadening the curriculum and increasing access to extracurricular activities. At the targeted level, we need to use data to help identify at-risk pupils early and provide mentoring focused on attendance or violence reduction through programmes like the Student Support Champions, which is a secondary school project that took place in Northumbria, and it involved external mentors working with students who are at risk of involvement in violence or crime. The mentors provided a safe space to explore the young people's attitudes and worries, which led to a better understanding of the underlying reasons for concerning behaviours and more appropriate support strategies for those young people. At the individualised level, we need to develop tailored approaches for each young person, and where difficulties are more severe and persistent, we need to consider alternatives such as alternative provision or telepresence. The case study of our space in the report provides an example of how a small intervention based on nurture principles helped to improve attendance for small groups of severe non-attenders. As Pam mentioned, schools can't address attendance issues on their own, and they need multi-agency support to address the complex range of factors involved. This might be through local authorities providing policy guidance, staff training, or provision beyond the school, such as alternative provision. The example of the Cradle to Career project in our report illustrates how collaborative working with the community in North Birkenhead is helping to address school absence and low educational attainment. They offer a holistic support package for young people and their families and have improved local partnership working. The project addresses parent barriers, pupil barriers, and provides individual support for young people and is showing improving attendance rates locally.
So final comments then. Basically what we are urging is the new government to support schools in developing their own bespoke solutions in collaboration with a range of local partners. Schools are best placed to develop their own flexible and responsive systems, but they can't do that on their own. Schools need support to focus on addressing key drivers for non-attendance, and those include poverty, lack of school readiness, and disaffection from education. They need support to offer support through early intervention, promoting engagement with learning and inclusion in schools.
Wonderful. So that really sets the scene for us. We're going to go on to the next contribution now, which is by Anna Wallace and Jeremy Swire, who are going to be talking about Bradford Safe Task Force, which is a case study within the report. So let's get started.
Hello everybody, welcome to a case study about the Bradford Safe Task Force for the Child of the North report. Okay, so just a little bit of background on what the Safe Task Force actually is. In 2021, the then incumbent Conservative government announced their Beating Crime plan, a part of which was the allocation of £30 million worth of funding for the DFE to give to 10 areas nationally where youth crime was seen to be at its highest. And you can see on the right-hand side of this slide here, the areas which received the funding. So as part of this settlement, Bradford was allocated £3.37 million to spend over 3 years. And this money was earmarked for commissioning and investing in evidence-based interventions around education, recognising that education is a protective factor in the lives of young people. We're always asked what SAFE stands for, and this is the basis for that acronym. So support, attend, fulfil, exceed. And also just a little bit of context about Bradford as well, for those people who might not know the area as well as myself and Anna. So Bradford itself is one of the most deprived areas of England and Wales, and there are really high levels of inequality. And this is demonstrated by the map that you can see on the top right-hand corner of this screen here. So the areas that are shaded in red are amongst the most deprived areas of the country, and the areas that are shaded in the darker blue are the least deprived areas. So you can see very close to each other there, the levels of inequality. There's also some other issues which are pertinent to this project. The local authority is in serious financial trouble with a trust in place running children's services. In addition, schools are not in a great place, with many rated as either inadequate or requiring improvement by Ofsted. And by looking at this map, I'm sure you can guess where those schools are based. In addition, attendance is much lower than the national average, and exclusions have been rising rapidly. The map in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen shows the geographical distribution of youth violence offences. And as you can see, there is quite a correlation between the areas of deprivation. And this is just a further map of distribution. This shows unauthorised school absences in Bradford. And you can clearly see how this correlates with the areas of deprivation and also youth violence. This map was taken from a report by the Vulnerability and Policing Futures Research Centre.
Thank you. From the beginning of the Safe Task Force project, we strongly felt that in order to accurately and successfully identify need, we had to go through a rigorous process of consultation. So to do this, we captured the voice of young people, communities and schools through focus groups and surveys. The data captured was underpinned by a commissioned strategic needs analysis, and this was completed for us by the Bradford Information Management team. Additionally, within the serious needs assessment, existing services were mapped. This helped to ensure services weren't duplicated through the commissioning cycle. Following consultation, 5 priority need areas were identified. And as you can see on the screen, we have the list of identified needs. So need 1 was linked to social and emotional regulation. Need 2, antisocial behaviour. Now, communities and schools identified that this antisocial behaviour was mostly taking place within the communities, but there was an overspill back into secondary schools. Need 3 relates to developmental delays in social language. Need 4, mental health, and need 5, attendance. Now, at this time, there was a query around girls' involvement in serious violence. This then later formed the basis of one of our larger scale interventions. Using all of this data gathered, we designed the service model for each intervention based upon a graduated model of support. This is what you can see on the screen. So we identified a three-tiered approach of universal, a core intervention and specialist support. The universal element links to whole staff awareness, targeted training for key staff and continued professional development. This is alongside curriculum development where appropriate and pastoral events such as assemblies. Now the core element of the interventions links directly to that support for young people and has referral processes embedded within this section, at one-on-one work supporting young people and smaller group work. Assessment and triage and action planning is also included within this element. We also felt very strongly that we had to embed referral mechanisms to professional agencies for those pupils with more complex needs and formal assessment. Each of the interventions commissioned directly relates to a priority need area. The Commando Joes project is focused around resilience, providing a positive role model for young people, building self-esteem and encouraging self-regulation. This takes place through teamwork and development of communication skills and project-based work for young people. The St Giles Trust project is our girls-focused mentoring intervention. This is based around positive relationships, support related to recognising toxicity and coercive behaviours, support for self-esteem and self-regulation, and raising awareness around social media and child criminal exploitation. School home support is our attendance-focused intervention, and this is in place to directly support the persistently absent cohort through forming positive relationships with both the young person and the family, and takes a whole family supportive approach, and their motto is whatever it takes. The S project was written for us by the Bradford Youth Justice Service and focuses upon weapons awareness and also providing targeted mentoring support based around mental health, and also has an attendance-focused element. Now, intervention packages for this project include the Managing Anger programme and Behind the Blade modules. Additionally, there's also bespoke packages offered to young people. So, the Education Psychology project focuses upon transition and identifying need in primary school and supporting young people with their transitions into secondary school in Year 6. The Educational Psychology team also provides support for schools based around assessment, the writing of EHCPs and evidence gathering processes. The BD4 attendance pilot project is delivered for us by Breaking the Cycle. So the team working in assertive outreach capacity, and they are targeting the 70 to 85% persistently absent cohort of young people who additionally have indicators of child criminal exploitation. Now, the aim of this project is to re-engage young people back into education and to provide that supportive approach with that transition back into school. The After School Club project was a grant scheme that we developed for schools in order for them to deliver after-school activities projects to vulnerable children and young people. And that's in that critical time window of 3 to 6 p.m. after school. Projects focused around enrichment, curriculum and enrichment, sporting activities and arts-focused projects. One of the first interventions that we commissioned was the Speech and Language project, delivered to us by the Speech and Language team at the local authority. And this project is focused around providing screening tools for schools and also providing training for schools in order to deliver assessment and triage based upon that.
Okay, so they are the 8 projects that we have commissioned. And we've been delivering these in 18 secondary schools and 44 primary schools. And the projects, our overall project is growing quite rapidly to the point now where we have over 40 members of staff working for us in various capacities. In terms of sheer numbers through the programme, we have supported just shy of 1,500 children with individual support, and some of our wider activities, such as in-community activities and things in assemblies, have reached over 20,000 young people. This is not to say that the SAFE Task Force has been without challenge, however. Probably chief amongst these challenges is just the sheer scale of deprivation that's being experienced by families in parts of Bradford. I'm sure most people who are on this call are well aware of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, whereby each level, moving up the pyramid, needs to be satisfied before the next stage can be met and satisfied. What we're finding is that the projects that we have commissioned tend to fall in the cognitive and esteem needs part of this pyramid, but some of the needs we find with I guess the more acute end of our cohort are more of these physiological needs. And this, you can see this illustrated here by one of our workers who's delivering donated bread to some of our participants' families. So it's really quite a difficult situation for some of the young people in Bradford at this current moment in time. This isn't to say that we aren't having some successes, however. We are starting to see some really positive signs in terms of impact. In terms of our early analysis, what we can see here is in terms of suspensions, you can see from this chart that there's been good improvements for SAFE participants. Overall, we've seen a reduction in suspensions of around 22% between school years 22 and 23 and 23 and 24 for young people who have taken part in SAFE funded activities. And there's also been a corresponding drop in the number of days lost to suspension, which indicates that there's not just fewer suspensions happening, as mentioned, but when suspensions do happen, they're for shorter periods of time. In terms of attendance, we are seeing some good improvements as well. As you can see here, an average of 45% of our participants improved their termly attendance. And for those young people who are known to youth justice, 24% showed an improved attendance at school, which I think is an excellent demonstration of impact.
Analysis of published data from the Youth Justice Board shows a significant drop in serious youth violence. Although this isn't correlated with individual projects, we do know that SAFE will have played its part. Additionally, there's been a significant drop in the reduction in recorded incidents of children carrying a bladed article on school premises. In 2022, there were 44 recorded incidents. In 2023, this dropped to 17, representing a 62% reduction from the previous year. And in 2024, to date, there have been 6 incidents. It's important to remember that the significant issues facing the city that were discussed at the beginning of this presentation. Although we are seeing a positive impact, it's important to remember that Bradford is facing a crisis point. Therefore, when services end, this will no doubt impact these figures. So alongside collecting citywide data, it's important to focus on the impact of projects on the individual young people. Here's an example of initial data gathered from an attendance-focused project. Although these figures might not impact whole school attendance data when we're looking at the 90% or less persistently absent cohort, the impact for individual students is significant. If we look at the screen and focus on TMC, their attendance has improved from nothing, 0%, to 64%. This is equivalent to 3 days a week in school. We know that when young people are in school, they're more likely to engage in an after-school club and to re-engage with school life, education being a significant protective factor in a young person's life. Thank you for listening. If you would like more information about the SAFE Task Force project, please see our web address on the screen, or do feel free to contact either myself or Jeremy. Thank you.
Amazing. So it was really great to hear more about the SAFE Task Force project there, thinking about how they're trying to tackle attendance and other aspects of childhood as well. So,
hello everyone.
Our next contribution is from Matthew and Judith, who will talk about the Wirral case study. And I'll just start that now.
Hi everybody, I'm Judith Temlett.
And I'm Matthew Fletcher, and we are educational psychologists with Wirral Council and the strategy coordinators for Wirral Emotionally Based School Avoidance Strategy.
So when we first sat down together to think about this strategy a year and a half ago, the first thing we really asked each other was what our hopes were for the strategy and what we were hoping to achieve, and what do we feel from the experiences we'd seen would make a difference to Wirral's children and young people and their families who feel unable to attend school because of emotional reasons. And what we came up with was this mission statement, which captured our view that it wasn't just telling people about EBSA, but we actually wanted to empower people.
When we initially planned the strategy, we were really keen to ensure that it remained informed by psychological research, but what we also wanted to do was to ensure that we'd actually captured and included the views of different stakeholders. So what we did was actually complete a scoping exercise, and we captured the views of children and young people, parents and carers, school staff and local authority services. What this did was that it resulted in the development of the 4 key strands of the strategy that you can see on your screen. What Judith and I are particularly proud of as part of this case study was that some of the activities within those strands included projects such as the creation of designated web pages, contributing to the development of a new pathway for additional support as part of Wirral's Access to Education panel, but we also completed a pilot project using AV1 robots to support education engagement, and this is something that we're going to talk to you a little bit about later on in this webinar.
By far the most impactful activity that we've completed in the first year of the strategy is the comprehensive training package that Matthew and I developed. Over 321 professionals have been trained from 103 teams and 32 local authority services. We also developed a bank of resources which supported the commercially available products that we gave out with the training. In order to promote a consistent approach to supporting non-attendance and empowering the professionals, we're now seeking to embed that training, and our initiative for this year is to run monthly EBSA network meetings for school staff where they can work with and collaborate with members of the mental health support teams, Wirral's inclusion team, Wirral's attendance team, and of course the educational psychology service. And we've held our first session and feedback from it has been really positive.
What we are now in development with the Parent Carer Forum on Wirral is the creation of parent workshops, and what we are planning to do with these workshops is to ensure that they complement the messages and training that was provided this year to professionals and school staff.
One of the more innovative ways that we've been supporting children and young people to re-engage with education is the use of the AV1 telepresence device, or the robots as we call them locally. The robot sits in the place of the young person in the classroom or in the dining hall or on the playground, and through a computer tablet they can sign in to an app and they can access a live stream of events happening in school or in the lesson.
Building on my doctoral research that was completed with the University of Manchester, we developed an implementation framework which is used as a way to support the AV1 and how settings use the AV1 to support education engagement and attendance. What we really want to promote in Wirral when using the AV1s is that the AV1 can be used to promote engagement first, to build up those connections with children and young people, with their classroom teachers, with any other adults within the setting, and then it can be used as a way to actually slowly develop a routine and to promote that consistent access to education. Over time, the AV1 will then help to build up that young person's confidence and resilience, and they may actually increase the amount of lessons they access via the AV1. And finally, over time, once their confidence has improved, we then may actually slowly withdraw the AV1 and increase the amount of lessons that the young person accesses in person. During summer term, we completed a pilot project with 6 schools who trialled the AV1 devices with pupils in their setting. On average, across 5 to 6 weeks, average attendance improved by 21%, and the number of hours of learning that pupils engaged with increased on average by 42%. What was really positive about the pilot was that when we interviewed the schools after the project, 100% would recommend the AV1 to other settings and would say that they would use the AV1 again, and the overall experience of using the AV1 was rated 4.4 out of 5.
The feedback from the schools was equally positive. In terms of relationships, we had comments such as it has enabled them to get used to seeing others' faces and hear their voices, reducing anxiety.
We received other comments about the AV1 actually supporting the improvement of emotional well-being of children and young people, with comments such as, I think it has raised their self-esteem to a point as it has given an opportunity to interact with other young people, which is what they want.
Of course, the main purpose of it is to re-engage with education, and schools, again, were complimentary about it, saying, yes, it sparked a level of enthusiasm for school and helped them feel a bit more positive about attending parts of the school day.
And finally, one of the key elements that the AV1 had a positive impact was to promote a sense of school belonging. We received comments such as the AV1 has helped our young person to retain a form of connection with their class. They are not able to be in the class with their peers, but have still felt a part of the setting. We appreciate that there is still a lot of work to be done. Effective change takes time to embed and to implement. When Judith and I were asked to complete this case study, we really tried to think about what is it that we have done that is different and a bit creative. And what we are really proud of is that every aspect of the strategy is underpinned by the values that you can see on your screen. We really want to promote that collaborative approach with all stakeholders, and every aspect of the strategy is underpinned by the principles of educational psychology and the promotion of inclusive values.
If you have any queries or feedback, please contact us on epresponse@wirral.gov.uk and we'll get back to you. And thank you so much for listening.
Some more fantastic information for another one of our case studies on emotional-based school avoidance. That was brilliant. We'll move on to our last but definitely not least contribution, which is by Louise and Sean. And off we go.
Hello, my name is Louise Stodgdale and I'm head teacher at Pennyman Primary Academy. Today we will briefly touch on 3 strands in this case study. A huge thanks to N8, Child of the North and Centre for Applied Educational Research for giving us this opportunity and for putting a spotlight on these ever-pressing issues in our sector. Slides will be shared after the event, so you have access to hyperlinks with more info too. Let's start by looking at Tees Valley education and why our attendance strategy is underpinned by beliefs about belonging. A bit about us first. We are a multi-academy trust, 5 academies of primary, secondary and special school provision. So perhaps some would say that we have a unique lens. Our academies were initially set up to serve Middlesbrough and with social justice in mind. We recognise that place was important, hence why we are Tees Valley. Middlesbrough and Redcar and Cleveland have significant challenges. You can read more about this in the N8 report. In 2020, the James Rowntree Foundation identified Middlesbrough as being the most destitute in the whole of the UK. Attendance is one of these areas of a child's life which will be hugely impacted by so many other issues. So whilst we talk about attendance this evening, please note that we have lots of work in place to understand inequality and poverty more broadly. Attendance is the symptom and it's not an issue in isolation. Like we shared in the report case study, belonging really matters in our schools and at Pennyman. Some of the ways we do this include creating positive learning environments, At Pennyman, for example, we create clear expectations with consistent rules and rewards and consequences to empower both staff and children, fostering a welcoming and supportive atmosphere. Removing barriers for vulnerable children is equally important. The Trust and Pennyman work to eliminate disadvantages that prevent vulnerable children from fully accessing education. We promote proactive safeguarding. A strong safeguarding culture encourages children and adults to speak openly about their concerns, ensuring that staff intervene early to prevent attendance and wellbeing issues. And of importance is pupil voice. As an academy and as a trust, we value child feedback and provides real opportunities for children and families to share their thoughts, helping to create a sense of belonging and ownership within the school community. Let's now look at specific attendance approaches with children. At Tees Valley Education, we are committed to promoting good attendance through a comprehensive and multifaceted approach. Our attendance graduated response framework offers a clear, step-by-step method for supporting pupils, ensuring that attendance is closely monitored and any concerns are addressed early. We provide personalised interventions to help children and families during challenging times, ensuring that individual needs are met. For vulnerable pupils, we work to remove barriers to education, often targeting support to ensure they can fully participate in school without disadvantage. Our policies, such as the Trust Uniform Policy, complement our attendance efforts by discouraging branded clothing, helping pupils feel more confident and included. Additionally, we prioritise pupil voice, giving children regular opportunities to share their views, which helps us create a more inclusive and supportive school environment. Together, these efforts help foster a positive, welcoming atmosphere where children want to attend and can thrive. Let's now look at specific attendance approaches with families and other adults. Our attendance graduated response framework provides a clear step-by-step guide for parents and carers, helping them fulfil their duty to ensure their child attends school full-time. We establish vital links between home, school and other services, creating a strong support network for our families. This ensures that parents and carers can access the resources they need to overcome any barriers to attendance. Recognising these challenges some families face, we offer pastoral and welfare support, including help with uniforms, transport, or even completing forms for wider services. To keep families informed about their child's health, we signpost parents and carers to the NHS Healthier Together app and website, providing up-to-date information on childhood illnesses and conditions. We also prioritise regular opportunities for parent, carer, staff and community voice, ensuring their feedback shapes our strategies and support systems, helping us meet the needs of the whole school community. Our last slide celebrates our Trust magazine. Our magazine is rooted in signposting support to families rather than just stories of academic achievement. We no longer give an exposition of each individual academy, but a whole trust one instead. One whole community dedicated to supporting our communities and supporting and serving people. This reinforces our emphasis on place, but also that we understand life is difficult and want to work to address barriers to school. Thank you for your time.
Another fantastic contribution there. That comes to the end of our webinar today. Thank you so much for attending the webinar and hearing more about the report. There is a QR code on the screen which you're able to scan to receive the new reports and obviously the attendance report, which is already out and is available on the website. The recording of this webinar will be made available within the next kind of couple of weeks. But if you have any questions which we haven't had the time to answer today, I know we're coming up to 5 o'clock, please do let us know. I can see that there's currently no questions within the Q&A section, but now is your time. We still do have a couple of minutes. So we'll wait on the call for another couple of minutes. But please do get in touch if you do have any questions. So our email is on the screen for the Centre for Applied Education Research. We will either be able to answer your questions ourselves, or we'll be able to put you in contact with our absolutely fantastic report leads, most of whom are on the call right now, and I'm sure we'll be able to answer some questions. So I will leave the chat open for the next kind of couple of minutes or so if you do have any questions. But again, thank you so much for your time today and for attending the webinar. Thank you.